Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 21 of Jacked Up Mean Frank. I'm your host, Jack Manos, here with my co-host, Frank Arenio, and we'll be discussing about the Knicks' latest clutch wins and also Jalen Brunson leading them on the back, of course, for those clutch wins. And what sets them apart than other teams against other teams in the clutch. We will discuss about the Yankees' injuries and their starting lineup and all about the MLB. And the first question I want to ask to lead off with the Yankees, how big of a problem is the lineup for the New York Yankees this season? With all the injuries of Stanton, and I think LeMahieu has gotten injured a little.
I mean, Stan being out's a big factor. Obviously he's a big bat in the middle of the lineup. LeMahieu's been unreliable for a few years now. He's been on the decline. He's had injuries, so he's not a big impact player anymore. But it still hurts. It still hurts their depth. Stan being out's a big concern. Now you could say, well, just kind of nurse him through the regular season and have him healthy for the postseason, which I think is legitimate because he really stepped up in the playoffs last year. He was excellent. So, it's most important for them to have him healthy at that time. They should be in the playoffs. They're in a weak American League. So, yeah, it's a big deal. But at the same time, I think Stanton's at the point in his career where you just got to be careful with him and nurse him along and have him healthy come playoff time.
Yeah, I think it's the thing come playoff time. And I think the added the added pitching this year for the Yankees has helped them out a little bit. As I said with the Mets, they can kind of weather the storm with the pitching until a certain day. I feel like the Yankees can do the same thing with their pitching. I mean, the Mets can weather the storm with their hitting, and the Yankees can weather the storm with the pitching. Do you believe that in kind of that method that they can weather the storm one way until they get to a certain date, and then you start thinking playoffs, and then you have your whole entire team? You have a full roster.
Yeah, I think the Yankees are a good team. They're not great. They're good. Um, and they're in a weak American League. It's just, Stanton's out, but he's been out before. I mean, he was out last year, right? Wasn't he out part of last year too? I mean, he's had plenty of injuries, but he was healthy when it mattered most, and he was great in the postseason. He really was a huge difference maker. I mean, at times he was carrying the lineup. So like I don't want to say it's like not a big deal at all, but I just keep him healthy. Don't rush him back. The Yankees will be able to weather the storm and get through the regular season. They've bolstered their pitching. Lineup's pretty good. Look, they lost Soto. I mean, you can't minimize that. I mean, he's a superstar, and that's a big loss for them. We'll see what Goldschmidt does and Bellinger. So they did add guys, but they lost a premier superstar in Soto. They still have Aaron Judge, who's as good as it gets. The Yankees are good. So it just helps them be in the American League. If they were in the National League, I think it'd be more of a concern. The competition would be a lot better. But look around the AL. The AL stinks. I mean, the division, the Orioles, people were like, the Orioles would be good for 10 years. It's like they don't spend money. I mean, they're still pretty good, but they're going in the wrong direction now. Everybody was, the Orioles, they're going to be a decade. They're going to be great. Like, pump the brakes on the Orioles. Orioles are, a favorite to make the playoffs, but the Yankees are the favorite in the American League East. I wouldn't say an overwhelming favorite, but they're the favorite. The Red Sox are in the mix now, but I think the Yankees are better. Their pitching's better. And you look at the rest of the American League, I don't know, the Central teams, you believe in any of those? I mean, maybe Cleveland is going to be very good, but the Yankees took care of them in the ALCS last year. The rest of those teams in the Central, I don't know, like they don't do much for me. They're on their way, but they're not that good. And then the West, there's no real good team in the West now. Again, I'm talking a lot about the American League, but your competition matters. So I think, the Yankees, despite injuries, have enough to weather the storm through the regular season.
Do you think even with even with all the injuries, I mean, even with the bad AL, the bad American League, do you think they could be overtaken by a team if the players like Goldschmidt, that's a what if, doesn't come out? What are we going to see from Cody Bellinger? Like, that's a lot of what ifs there. And will Aaron Judge be able to carry this team? I mean, I think he will throughout the regular season, but how much? Will Austin Wells um, bounce back and be that hitter? Will Anthony Volpe step up the play at the plate and
Yeah,
have the season
again,
people?
they're good, not great. I mean, they have a lot of question marks. So, I mean, look, they're I don't think they're an overwhelming favorite in the American League or in the division. Um, I think Baltimore's in play for the division. I think the Red Sox are in play for the division. I mean, if I'm making my picks right now, which I reserve um, making final picks until we get closer to opening day, but right now I would pick the Yankees to win the division, but I don't pick them confidently. I think Baltimore and Boston are in the mix. Those teams have question marks too if you're to break down their rosters. But the Yankees, I mean, Luis Heel, like he has an injury. What's the latest on him? I heard that he has an injury. You got to have him healthy. You want him to take the next step this year. He showed a lot of promise last year, particularly earlier in the season. Max Fried, if he's healthy, he's really good. He
He's
could
in
be
the IL.
Heels on the IL, so that's a concern. So he's a big part of the rotation. Max Fried has had injury problems. If he's healthy, he's pretty much another ace. Garrett Cole is their ace, but Fried is an ace level pitcher when he's healthy and
Yeah,
he's at his best. Rodon, there's questions with him. What's he going to be? Clark Schmidt is pretty solid. You got Marcus Stroman in the mix, who said he won't go to the bullpen, so you got that situation. Not surprised with him; he's never been much of a team player. So that could be something that factors in with them and the morale and the chemistry of the team. But either way, I
he got
don't I
light
don't
up
think
in
he.
spring training. He got lit up.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he's not a big factor. But he's
Yeah,
one of those guys. Like when I heard that, I was like, oh, no surprise. Like he's never been a guy that's been a team player. Always seemed like a real me guy, loves the attention, but he's not even that big a factor for them. So it's kind of like whatever. Um, but you look at their bullpen. I mean, I'm looking at their bullpen right now. I mean, they got.
they
I think
they
their bullpen's got a lot to be desired. I
yeah.
mean, Luke Weaver took big strides last year. Bullpens are year to year. Like you just never know with guys. Um, but
As bad as Clay Holmes was at times, I feel like losing him is still for their bullpen as like you even if he stinks closing the game, him in a reliever role is something that you're definitely in the bullpen gonna miss. I know bullpens year to year type thing, but he's always
Well,
been
they
a
got Devin Williams, so he was a big acquisition.
yeah,
So, I mean, look, the Yankees have a good bullpen, and
yeah.
he's the big piece there. They get him as a closer. We'll see how he does in New York. I always wonder that. He was in Milwaukee. I don't know if it's going to be a factor or not, but I think it's a legitimate question. Let's see what he does with the Yankees. Luke Weaver, I mean, he showed a lot last year. He had some big outings in the playoffs, so he's a big guy for them. So I think their bullpen will be good. I don't think it's a great bullpen, but we'll see. I mean, we got to see guys. I always find it's tough to predict
It's
bullpens.
tough to
You think you know what it's going to be, but we got to see it play out. Go ahead, Jack.
yeah. I said it's tough because sometimes the bullpen now isn't gonna be the bullpen sometimes when you get down to the playoffs. So it's really hard to predict because bullpens are like for at least for the Mets. I know it might be a different thing but they bring up a lot of guys and they just. I remember a different way Stearns plays the game. Stearns GM's the game, but he brings up a lot of guys, and he just his bullpen changes and everything. But I feel like it's the same thing for every team. Bullpen is not something that is kind of set in. So I mean, you have your set in stone guys you have everywhere, but the rest of them are really not set in stone. I mean, you have one bad relief game, we could just DFA you. The teams can just DFA you, and there you go. And we're just bringing another reliever. So the relievers are a thing that's hard to predict. I mean, you could definitely predict the Devin Williams, even the Clay Holmeses of the world who come in relief in Class A. Like you can predict them, but you cannot really predict those other relievers. Even AJ Minter, you cannot predict those other relievers, kind of. So it's hard to predict.
Yeah,
Definitely the
I mean,
relief pitch.
I'll say the Yankees bullpen is good. I'm not going to say it's great. Again, Devin Williams is a big acquisition. We'll see what he does in New York. Luke Weaver. I'm repeating myself, but he's a big part of that pen and showed a lot last year. But we'll see if
Yeah.
he can repeat it. That's often a problem for relievers. So we'll see what happens there. They got question marks. Paul Goldschmidt, what's he going to be at 37 years
Yeah.
old?
If
Bellinger,
he
you would
is,
think that Yankee Stadium plays well to, what he brings as a left-handed hitter. So he could be a guy that, is very good for them. I don't think he's a surefire thing, but, there's potential for him to really work out for the Yankees. And I'm just thinking about Stanton. Look, I don't want to minimize it because, Soto's not there anymore. So I think there's more that they need from Stanton without Soto being there. But again, I think they have enough where they could get through the regular season. It'd be a disaster if they didn't make the playoffs. I think they'll be there. And they got to be careful with Stanton because you need him when it matters most. Because he's great in the playoffs. He's great in the clutch. So they got to make sure that they nurse him back to health and then they keep him healthy. He's going to have his off days. They're going to have to be really careful with him.
yeah, and the regular season for them is going to be a little about can they kind of like with the younger guys, can Austin Wells, can Anthony Volpe catch their stride for the playoffs? That I think is going to be their because they can still get away and win games. I just think their 162 will all be about can we develop these players for the playoffs? Like they're going to come out and win some games, but with the AL, you're going to win games, but I think it's going to be more developing some guys like a Paul Goldschmidt to help him in the playoff with around this team, the new guys, kind of, and still the young guys. So I think that's gonna be the thing they're gonna try to develop.
Yeah, and their rotation has the potential to be really good. With Cole, Max Fried. If he's healthy, you got two aces there. So it's tough to play the what if games. Fried has a history of injury. Cole was injured last year, but he's pretty much been healthy for his career. So you have the potential to have two aces. Rodon, he's not rock solid, but if he's on his game, if he's healthy, he could certainly be a very important part of the rotation and a good starter for the Yankees. Louis Seal's key. You want to keep seeing his progression. He's on the IL now, but they have the potential to have one of the best rotations in baseball. So if you have one of the best rotations in baseball, you got the potential to be a 95 plus win team. So, the Yankees, if it all clicks for them and this rotation is really good, they'll be over a 95 win team. They could be closer to 100 wins. But if there's some injuries there, I'd be surprised if they don't get to 90 wins. But, if things don't break right for them and there's some injuries there or maybe some guys underperform, they could be a 90 win team as well. So, it's the Yankees, their expectations are, it's always to win the World Series. They made it last year, and they're the favorites in the American League. So there's a lot of pressure on them to get back. It's really they have to get to the World Series, and if they don't, it's going to be a major disappointment.
Yeah, because they tried to do this whole, especially. They didn't just lose Soto and do nothing. They spent and they spent. What Yankees fans' opinion was they spent well and they spent smartly. So that's what they would say. But that definitely gives you a chance to go back to the World Series and do it again, and go back there and try to break down the wall. It's gonna be hard, but they spent well, especially after losing Soto. They definitely bounced back pretty well, and now they have a lineup that has potential to be something decent. Right now, as you're looking at it, it looks pretty, incomplete. If you're gonna look at it from an eye standpoint, you look at it right now, it probably looks incomplete. But I think their vision is if you get closer to the playoffs, that lineup, those holes will kind of come closer together, and you will see a lineup that looks close to decent. And especially you want that lineup to be decent because they think that pitching can kind of push them over the top. That starting pitching, definitely, if everybody's healthy, that's a what if, but if everybody's healthy, then that pitching can put them over the top.
Yeah, and then if you have that rotation in the postseason,
It
you're
get,
set
it
up
gets you
really well, particularly
first.
getting through the American League. But that's a rotation that could win your World Series.
Well,
Look, the
yeah,
World
because then
Series is 7.5 months away, but that's a World Series winning rotation. Then it's going to depend on their bullpen. Again, Devin Williams, I mean, on paper looks really good, but you want to see him in New York, and then postseason in New York, he gave up
Yeah,
the home run
postseason.
to Alonso. I mean, so look,
Yep,
I mean, that's a big deal. So he was really good last year, but then he gives up that home run in the biggest spot of the year. So you can't really, um, I guess, hold it too much against them.
yeah.
For the regular season, he's going to be somebody that should help the Yankees a lot. But hey, I mean, he gave up that home run in the biggest spot of the year. It just shows you with bullpens, like, um, you know, it, we don't know. I mean, is
You
that
don't
is that
know.
is that something that's going to linger with him? Like something like that could really stick with a player, giving up a home
Well,
run like that.
you don't.
But maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't. Maybe his makeup and his toughness, his mentality, he's able to get beyond it. But moments like that have had a negative impact on pitchers in the past. So we're not going to know until we get to the postseason. But but when it comes to closers and relievers, there's one Mariano Rivera. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
like it's him historically, and then there's not too many guys that are even close. Like he's before your time, but he was just locked down. To me, like everybody else, it's like I almost feel like there's always questions, what you're going to do in the postseason, what you're going to do in the big spot. But again, like the Yankees pitching, it lines up to be really good, particularly rotation. But even the bullpen, on paper it looks good, but we'll see how it plays out.
Well, I think bringing in those starters really helped them kind of mitigate some what ifs from the bullpen, because if they can go deep with those starters, that's why I don't understand why other teams don't get some more quality starters or less what if starters, because that bullpen's always gonna be a what if. So you have a what if starting pitching staff and a what if bullpen. It kind of clashes, and it could end up being dangerous for a team. So the Yankees bringing in a bunch of pitching, a bunch of starting pitching, definitely mitigates some what ifs down later in the game. How deep somebody like Freed can go and
It'll
out.
be interesting to see how deep they'll go into games with their starting pitchers. You get the trend in baseball for starters to pitch less and less, and you know, not go so deep into games. So it'll be interesting to see how the Yankees handle that with the rotation they have. Do they let their starters go deeper than most teams? I think they should, but then they're going to try to be careful with guys and not over pitch them and tax them
Yeah.
too much. Again, you want to have guys healthier later in the year and certainly for the postseason. But with the Yankees rotation, I mean, I would certainly have their rotation go deeper in games than most other rotations. But then you see with the bullpen, like if the bullpen's lights out or you're pitching really well, then you'll go to the bullpen more. So you got to see it play out. But I would think the Yankees will kind of buck the trend of most teams and allow their starters to go deeper than most teams allow their starters to go. And I'd like, just like as a baseball fan, I'd like to see the trend go in that direction again, where starters go deeper in the game. So the Yankees, it'll be interesting to see how Boone or whoever's ultimately making decisions, Cashman, how they're going to handle that this year.
Yeah. But I think they still do like trust that their bullpen will still be solid. I mean, I think more for the postseason when you can have starting pitchers going in 6 or 7, that helps your bullpen a lot. Like that helps you bring out one
Well,
guy.
it's always great. I mean, you get,
Yeah.
it's great to have starters go deeper, but again, it's not the way it is in baseball anymore. And then the postseason, you use a 4-man rotation instead of a 5, or this team's doing 6. So you'll have a guy or two go to the bullpen. So postseason, you got a quicker hook. So you have starters come out of the games even earlier, which makes sense. You have a deeper bullpen because you have a starter or two that's in the bullpen. You have more off days. So the postseason is very different. Regular season, again, like a team like the Yankees, I would stretch the starters out more and have them go deeper into games. But then you're gonna see how it plays out. You can't, you gotta see how guys perform, and you gotta manage it according to how your team is performing and who's healthy and who's available and all that. But the Yankees rotation lines up to be one that could be the best in baseball or top 2, top 3. So that's got to be a strength of their team.
Yeah, it has to be, especially with them losing Juan Soto. I think again that big whole thing of them losing him, that's a lot of power and contact that left your lineup. So trying to make that up in the pitching, you never really make that stuff up, but trying your best to do it in the
To me,
pitching.
starting pitching is still the most
Yeah,
important part of a team. It always will be, no matter how much things change. It's the most important part of a baseball team. So the Yankees, on paper, have a really good rotation. I mean, it's them and the Dodgers. I know Dodgers 1, Yankees 2 in terms of rotation. I mean, the Yankees, again, I'll say top 2 or 3. Um, so again, I still view that as the most important part of a baseball team. So that's very favorable for the Yankees. Um, and again, overall roster, good roster. There's holes. They're the best team in the American League, but they're not a juggernaut. I mean, they definitely can be had. They definitely can be beaten. I think, Baltimore and Boston have a chance in the division, but the Yankees are clearly the favorite in division, and they're also clearly the favorite in the American League.
yeah, they are definitely the favorite going in to the season for the AL, especially with them going deep in the playoffs last year and still having Aaron Judge for the regular season. So he's a regular season juggernaut. So that's something that the
Well,
team.
it's going to be a big thing
Yeah.
for them too. How does Judge perform in the postseason this year? Again, that's really a question for 7 months from now. But there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. And how does he respond? I think eventually he's going to have a big postseason. Could be this year. I think he's too good not to. But he certainly has had his struggles. He had big struggles last year. So hey, if he breaks out this year in the postseason, has a big postseason, Yankees got a good chance of being World Series champions. If he doesn't, I don't think they have any chance. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to step up big time in the postseason.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of pressure for him, especially with them losing a guy like Juan Soto. And what will Paul Goldschmidt really be? What will he do to help Aaron Judge? So it's gonna be a lot more pressure on Aaron Judge for him to succeed because especially they'll just start pitching around Stan. If Stan's that guy again in the playoffs, they'll just start not pitching to him and they'll just pitch to Aaron Judge or they'll pitch to someone else. Like they're gonna really need him to show up this playoffs.
I think Judge will be plenty fine in the regular season. Like, they lost Soto, but Judge was amazing in the regular season before Soto got there. I mean, he was with the team for 1 year. Judge hit 62 home runs in 2022. Soto wasn't there. So Judge will be fine in the regular season. I mean, you'd love for him to have an all-time great regular season, but you'd rather see him, hit 40 home runs in the regular season and then step up in the postseason and have a big postseason and say hit 50 plus home runs and have a all-time great year in the regular season and then struggle in the postseason. I mean, look, you want both, but Judge, to me, as long as he's healthy, again, that's a what if, but he's had some injuries in his career. But if he stays healthy, he's gonna have a dynamite regular season. He'll be in contention for the most valuable player. He's the favorite for the most valuable player in the American League. But hey, that pressure come October, I mean, it's going to be immense on him. So look, 7 months from now, it's going to be very interesting to see what he does in the bright lights in October.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. Also, how he responds in that playoffs, losing a guy like Soto. I mean, who really like if Stan, but like who else comes up? Who else steps up? And they're gonna make the World Series. Not gonna just be Justin Stan. They're gonna have to need some contributors from other players. Could it be Volpe? Could it be Wells? Could it be somebody? Could it be even Goldschmidt or Bellinger? Like they're gonna need someone else, and they're also gonna need some good hitting, which is why it's a big season for the young guys for the Yankees and Wells and Volpe and even Dominguez. It's a wild situation to put him in because it's a connecting team, and they threw him right in into left field or right field. He can't play that right now, but it's spring training, and he's gonna learn. But yeah, we'll have to see some stuff from him right as his career starts. He's gonna have to produce for this team at least a decent to average level. So especially in the postseason, they're gonna have to need a lot of people, more than just Judge and Stan. especially.
Yeah, I mean, you need contributions throughout the lineup for sure. But, you've seen guys carry teams. I
Yeah,
think A-Rod in 2009, I mean, he really carried. There's other examples too, but that just stands out. We're talking about the Yankees. I mean, A-Rod really carried them in '09 and led them to the World Series. I mean, other guys contributed too, but he had such a big postseason. So, look, I mean, you need other contributors. It's not just one guy. But, hey, I mean, look at what Stanton did last year. I mean, Soto had a really good postseason. So, yeah, you're right, Jack. I mean, the more contributions, the better. But, if somebody steps up, particularly a superstar, and has a big time postseason, that goes a long way. And that could be a big part of winning a championship. Not everything. You're going to need the pitching too. Like, I mean, baseball, you need everything. I mean, you need a well rounded roster. And the Yankees have a well rounded roster. They have questions, but, again, their starting pitching could be really good. Bullpen could be good. Lineup could be good or, even very good. So, they do have a well-rounded team, but, not a juggernaut. Dodgers are a juggernaut. I mean, they're just ridiculous how good they are on paper. And it should translate on the field. I mean, they're just, far and away above everybody on paper. But Yankees are good.
yeah,
And
so
it's a good debate about who's the second best team in baseball.
yeah,
And I
so
think, go ahead.
so yeah. Talking of the pitching, Luis Gill has been diagnosed with a high grade lat strain and will be shut down for at least 6 weeks.
I mean,
So
it's a problem. I mean,
yeah,
look, it's three and a half
Stroman
weeks
just
from
stepped right
opening
in.
day. That thing could linger longer than it said. At least 6 weeks. I bet it'll be longer. It's a problem for them, but want to be careful. You want to rush him back. Whatever he needs to get back, and then, then hopefully he, regains his form and builds on what he did last year. Because early in the season, the first few months, he was ridiculous,
Yeah,
ridiculously good.
yeah. So we will see what this Yankees team does with their pitching and them losing Juan Soto and still finding a way to put together a team that looks to be in the World Series um, above all the AL. So we'll go into now. We want to discuss the Knicks and their latest clutch wins against. They came back from 20 points against the Miami Heat last night, where Jalen Brunson put in 31 points. OG Anunoby looked like a beast defensively, the way that we as Knicks fans think that he can be. Um, then good contributions off the bench from campaign, and then Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson. His return has been very good. Just a little stuff about him diving on the floor, him just being big and a big threat that people cannot drive on usually, and people think twice about going up with a layup. Where you would see other centers and people would look at them and lick their lips and go up with a layup. So it's a little bit different between Mitchell Robinson and other centers because he's one of the best. He's one of the best. When you see Mitchell Robinson in the paint, you're probably not going up with the ball unless you have a crazy layup package. But you're probably not going to go up with the ball and you're probably going to kick out, which is good for this Knicks defense. So it's been a positive with him on the floor and his rebounding, of course, getting second opportunities. And you can't give this Knicks team second opportunities. You can't give any great or good team good second opportunities because Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges will get their shot, or Cat will get their shot in the hoop, and it will come to fruition for the Knicks. You do not want to give up second opportunities to these great teams, even teams like the Celtics, Thunder. You do not want to give up second opportunities, which I felt like the Knicks were missing. So Mitchell Robinson's a big part of it, literally and figuratively, of this Knicks offensive rebounding and rebounding as a whole. So, yeah, I mean they had some troubles defensively as we talk about in that first quarter in the first half going to the third quarter. It was just a simple pick and roll defense with Carnegie Towns. The guy looks lost defensively. I don't know. It's like we knew this guy was not the best defensive player, but this guy looks awful defensively. It looks like a layup line. So it's something the Knicks need to consider about maybe changing their lineup around, not taking him out, but changing it around where Mitchell Robinson can be in with him, where Cat can play the 4, and you have Mitchell Robinson at the 5. So you could pair Cat with a big center so he doesn't have to take on that much of a responsibility under the rim. That's just one of the thoughts that I have.
What's the bigger story last night? The way the Knicks started the game or the way they finished the game?
Well, I know all the fun stories are about Jalen Brunson, the way he's been clutch throughout the last week or 2 weeks, just insanely clutch. That's a big story, but I think the way they started the game defensively is also a big story as well. And contending teams don't usually have that kind of hiccup in the first half where they don't even look like they give any effort. So that's a story too. But I think the way Jalen Brunson closed that game and the way the Knicks kind of found something defensively to only hold the Heat to 112, I think is good for them. And the way OG Anunoby kind of, you know, he's been a guy this season that hasn't really shown up, especially that contract. But this game, he definitely showed up with 23 points and played great defensively. The guy's a beast defensively when he wants to be and when he's healthy. Not when he wants to be, when he's healthy. And he can get blocks. He had 3 blocks and 2 steals. He had a possession where he had 3 blocks in a row. That
When you
guy
always
is
talk about the Knicks,
yeah.
the most important thing is the big picture, which we've been talking about. We talked about it a lot last week. So this game yesterday, does this move the needle forward for them? Do you think it was a step in the right direction? Was it a step in the wrong direction because of the first half? Or are they still where they were before the game began? So I think it's most important to look at the big picture for the Knicks. Like, did this move the needle forward for them in their quest to, let's say, compete with Boston and Cleveland? So, I mean, how much do you learn from last night's game? Again, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, oh, you can say, oh, well, they came back. Brunson's clutch, but then on the flip side, the poor defense in the first half. So where are they at now after that game?
I think they're the same after that game, but the game before that where they played the Memphis Grizzlies, who are, not trying to go on a tangent, who are 30-22, when they beat them by a score of 114 to 113, having some clutch stops at the end and having some clutch plays again from Jalen Brunson, that shows me more. That shows me the Knicks have another gear defensively that they have.
So since the last time we talked, the Knicks beat the Sixers. All right, took care of them. The Sixers stink. They won by 5 at home. Like you said, the Memphis wins on the road, really impressive. And then the win yesterday against Miami. So since we last talked, so they had played the Celtics the day before we last had our show. So they played them last Sunday. We had the show Monday. So in the last 3 games, have the Knicks moved the needle forward? Have they gone backwards? I would say they haven't gone backwards. They've won 3 games. So have they moved the needle forward at all, or are they in the same spot they were? Like, do you think better of them a week later? Worse of them, which again, I don't think you think worse of them, or is it just, it's the same as when we last talked a week ago?
Same as what we've talked the last week ago, because I can say this Knicks team has shown me these last 3 games they have toughness to finish games. But again, you got to compete in them. And especially against Celtics, they didn't compete in those games. So you need to have the toughness to get through that game and get to the end. Because, I mean, you can say this Knicks team is one of the best clutch teams in the league, or is the best clutch team in the league. It doesn't matter if you don't get it there. It doesn't matter if you don't get into clutch situations. It doesn't matter if the Celtics and the Thunder and the Cavs blow you out. It doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, Phil still seems the same way, but it is like, damn, if these games can get close in the end, maybe the Knicks can pull it off. But again, it's the effort. I mean, it's the intensity and the defensive intensity and effort that kind of pulls other teams away from the Knicks, and they can't get in those clutch games, clutch scenarios. where Brunson can do his thing. So that's whatever. I mean, they're doing clutch things against bad teams. I feel like their talent is winning out, which at the end of the day, that's not going to win them a championship. Talent itself is fine, but when you meet talent with talent, you're going to have coaching and stuff like that that's going to have to win you games. The minor details are to win you games. Knicks just won off of talent and talent itself against teams that have had less talent. Let's put it at that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, same spot.
They do have some tough games in the next
Yeah,
3 days.
I gotta give them a little grace with the Philly game, the Miami game. I mean, I don't know. Like they won the games. They lost last night, we'd be talking differently, and they won in overtime. But like you said, the Memphis win. I mean, that's a big win. You're beating a very good team on the road. Yes, I think when you just factor all together, they're in the same spot as they were a week ago. So they haven't moved the needle in either direction. But I think you could. It depends on what you want to focus on. I mean, if you really want to focus on the Philly, particularly Miami games, and say it's not good enough, okay. But then there's the Memphis game. So I think you're pretty much in the same spot as you were last week.
I think we're in the same spot that they can beat the tier below the Celtics, Cavs, and Thunder, and that's where they kind of are, but they still aren't at that top tier where the Celtics and Thunder and Cavs are. But they can beat the bottom tier with teams like the Grizzlies, Thunder. I mean, not Grizzlies, Rockets, and those type of teams they can beat, but not to that tier, which kind of improved my point there in the games where the Knicks have kind of fell short against
in their remaining schedule. So they play Cleveland and Boston twice, and those games are all. No, excuse me. They play Cleveland twice and Boston once. So there's 3 more games against those 2 teams combined. But those games are in April. Again, where are those teams going to be at? Are they pretty much going to be locked into their seed 1 and 2? So I don't know how much you're going to learn from those games. So like, what are we looking for here between now and the end of the regular season where we could assess if the Knicks have made strides in being able to be very competitive with Boston and Cleveland? Like what?
So what we would see out of the Knicks is just more like better defense to get through these games against teams like the Heat or teams like the Celtics. I mean, teams like the Heat and teams like the Grizzlies and 76ers. Can we see some improvement defensively that can transfer onto those games? And when they meet again, can that defense kind of transfer? So the defense is my biggest thing right now. Can Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, are they too much of a weak point defensively for the Knicks to even compete with teams like that? But I think they're going to have to figure it out in these games against even the Warriors and Lakers. They're going to have to figure it out in those games.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've talked a lot about the defense, and that's the big concern for the Knicks. So, yeah, I mean, you could learn some things within games, and if you really break it down, you want to see the defensive improvement. But it's interesting to see as the season keeps going on and there's more games and we keep talking, where you see the defense at. And then if it gets to a point where you say, you know what, the defense has improved and I feel good about them being able to play the type of defense that's necessary to be very competitive in a series with Boston or Cleveland.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. Can that defense transfer? Can the defense against the Heat, can the defense against the 76ers, can that transfer? Do I feel confident enough to think they can go out and beat a team like the Cavs or the Celtics? Because right now I don't feel confident in defense. So as he goes through these games, Mitchell Robinson gets more healthy. He's getting back in the swing of things. They could become a team that is a little bit better defensively than they are right now. Now, I wanted to go and look at the NBA standings, and or the NBA stand. And one of the surprises for me is that the Lakers are in second in the West, and what they've been able to do defensively, with Luka and LeBron for them, I think has been kind of impressive. They've been on an 8-2 win streak, and their defense has been very impressive. They're holding teams to a lot less points because we know they're a team that could put up points with Luka and LeBron as their two primary guys, and they also have some guys in Austin Reeves. So they're winning these games where they're holding teams to 102, holding teams to 102, 102, 102, and then 99 and 100, 102, 100. So they're holding teams these low amount of points. I think that's the kind of the goal for them, is if they can get those, because they have such a talented team in Luka and LeBron, and the rest of their team that can show up on nights, and Austin Reeves, they feel good enough that they can hold you to 100, and we can put up points in bunches that we can come out to win. So I think it's been a weird thing with them defensively. You would think that a team that loses AD would be a team that would be less of a factor defensively than they are right now. They've kind of been a team that has flipped the switch defensively.
What chance do they have to beat the Thunder?
I don't know, because they're so early in this trade. The Thunder are a juggernaut here, so it's going to be hard for them. But I think if Luka buys in defensively, the sky's the limit for this team.
Are the Lakers definitely the second best team in the West now?
I would think so. I would say. Might be a little bit of hot take. I think the Lakers are better than the Rockets. I think that that team and the way they're defending has made me believe that. Now, they could start slipping defensively. In my opinion, can change, but for now, their defense has been astounding. So
we got to see a bigger sample size of Luka.
Yeah,
being in the lineup.
Yeah, bigger sample size him in the lineup, but for now, it's been looking good defensively. So I want to see, because they can definitely just start sliding defensively, but I think it's a good trend. I mean, also, as we talked about the Knicks, good test against the Lakers. It is a good test for the Lakers against the Knicks. So for them, can they kind of continue their defensive run against such a talented team offensively? Can they do that? So it's gonna be a big test for them in their
that's coming up on Thursday.
In their next few games. Yeah, can they keep their defense against? They got the Knicks and they got the Warriors. They got
It's going to be a big defensive test for both teams. Let's see the Lakers defense against the Knicks and the Knicks defense against the Lakers.
Yeah, and they got the Thunder.
That's going to be a very interesting game Thursday. That's a regular season game. You say, you know what, you could learn some things in that game. I don't know how many of these games that Knicks have left where you could really learn anything.
The Lakers got two games.
That's a game where you could learn something about both teams.
Yeah, and you could also learn something about the Lakers against. They play the Thunder on April 6th and April 8th, so those are games that are later in April.
Yeah, but by then,
I didn't look at it right. I didn't look at it right.
I have the one seed locked up now. I know not mathematically, but by then, I mean, if the Lakers go and beat the Thunder, what does that really mean?
Never mind. I didn't look at it right. I didn't look at it right. I didn't go down.
That's all right. I just saying. I'm like, I don't think you can learn anything. Just like the Knicks against Cleveland and Boston in April. I don't think there's gonna be anything to learn there about the Knicks because Cleveland and Boston just may be coasting by then, and they have their seeds locked up. So
the Lakers do play the Nuggets on March 14th, though. So that's a game against two top teams in the West. And the way the Nuggets are playing, I could say they're the second best team in the West, but I'm sticking with the Lakers. And the way they're playing right now, and the way I know Luka can play, and the way I know LeBron can play at his age, I think they're the second best team in the West. I think they have the.
The two games coming up against Golden State, they play them on March 4th. Then their next game at the Garden, so that's tomorrow. and then March 15th in San Francisco. So those two games, would you say that we can learn a lot about the Knicks defense against Golden State with their offensive prowess?
Yeah, they've always been an offensive prowess team. Yeah, I think you can learn a lot about this team because the way the Warriors, I don't think you can the Warriors and the way they have been the way their momentum has been offensively, it's going to be a test for the Knicks because they dropped 132, 126, 128, 121, 119. So they're a team of steam on the offensive end. Can the Knicks shut them down? Because I know the Hornets won't do anything tonight. So there'll be nothing the Hornets can do. So the Knicks can be a team that could definitely shut that water off. And we'll see. Is that Warriors stuff real? Is this Warriors run that they are on real? Can they really put up points in bunches with Jimmy Butler? Is that acquisition really that big of a deal? Can that make them one of the top teams in the West? Because they're five. They're never mind. Can that make them one of the top teams that are competing in the West for a spot in that in a high? Can they bump up their seed? So that is going to be
Yeah, they're tied for
yeah.
sixth. I mean, they're 5 games back of the Rockets for fifth.
Yeah, it is. That's going to be something that they are going. That's something that they're gonna circle. Is that can they play? Can their offense perform against this Knicks? Can this offense perform against this Knicks defense? So
Yeah, so I mean, look, I mean, these next 2 games, these are games we could learn something about the Knicks, Golden State, and then at the Lakers. And you have a 5-game road trip. I think you learn something from there, just going on the road, the grind of a 5-game West Coast trip. So I just think overall that trip we'll see something from the Knicks. I mean, they certainly want to have a winning road trip. 3 wins at least. You got to come back with a winning road trip. But I mean, look, between the 2 Golden State games and the Lakers game, those 3 games in the next week and a half, there's going to be plenty to talk about in those games. I think other games, I don't know how much we're really going to learn. It's kind of like in other games, the Knicks have nothing to gain in terms of us evaluating them. Like if they beat lesser teams, mediocre, poor teams, you say, well, they should beat them. But then if they lose, going to get on their case for that, and rightfully so. If they win close, we can say, well, you got to perform better against those teams. So there's really only a few games on the schedule left where I think you say, you know what, there's something to learn here. Like you said, particularly defensively for the Knicks, how do they defend Golden State Warriors? How to defend the Lakers? And then when they play Boston and Cleveland, I mean, we'll see where Boston and Cleveland are at that time. How much we can learn from those games at that time in April. But, I think, Jack, again, like that's the main conversation with the Knicks now is seeing big picture and assessing have they moved the needle. And then, like you said, really focusing on where they're at defensively.
yeah, that's the big picture. Something for the Knicks, and that's good for them to talk about is the big picture because that means good. That means title aspirations for them, and they've been.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Look, we've talked about it's been a long time since the Knicks have been in this spot. This will be the 3rd year in a row, I think 4 out of 5 that they made the playoffs. But it's great to be in the spot where we're talking about the Knicks' big picture and saying, hey, it's about, again, you choose what the bar is, but if you want to say it's about an NBA title, I think that's going to be really tough this year. But if you say, okay, that's what it's about now, or it's, like I said, just really being really competitive, highly competitive with Boston and Cleveland. I think for now, that's the bar. Obviously you want to see more, but, when this season ends, you want to at least see that they were really competitive, against those teams. And the way it's looking now, it'll be the Knicks and the Celtics in the second round. So it's going to be about how the Knicks perform in that series and if they give the Celtics a serious run or they don't. So, like you said, I mean, it's a great thing to be talking about the Knicks in that regard where, hey, the Knicks are up there. They're in the conversation now in the NBA. You could debate where exactly they're at But they're, in a situation where the expectations are significantly high.
Yeah, their expectations are super high, and it starts by the acquisitions they have made this offseason and the way they made them, and the way Carthy Towns has really been a guy offensively, and they have been an offensive juggernaut at times. So it's about kind of harnessing that and putting that stuff all together. And that's the biggest thing for the Knicks right now is how they can put all that stuff together and win games. Because you see the talent's there, and that's the talent Leon Rose has bring in is a bunch of talent. But it's about can they put it all together? Can they put it together defensively? And can they will some victories as well? Can they will some? Can they have a defensive game here and there? So that's gonna be something. I think it showed me something against the Grizzlies where they played a little grit and grind game with them. I think it was a little bit of gritty. I think it was a little gritty game with the Memphis Grizzlies. It was a good thing to see. It's a good thing to see for these guys to play a tough game and to really grind out some wins because not all of it's going to come easy. It's not going to come where you shoot 33s and all of them goes in. It's not going to happen all the time. You're at to win games defensively. You have to win games
Yeah.
at the end of the game, and you're at to win them with some clutch stops. So that's good for the Knicks, learning how to win those ways and learning how to win different ways. So this is also a team that has just been brought together. So winning these different ways, it will help them playoff time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Being able to win in different ways. It makes me think of the Chiefs in the NFL, crossing sports. Even though they got smoked in the Super Bowl, they're a team that wins in different ways. That's why I thought they were going to three-peat. Obviously, that didn't happen, but they're a prime example in sports of a team that can win in different ways. High-scoring game, low-scoring game, all three phases of football. So if you could be a team like that, that can win in different ways. That just gives you a better chance to win big and win a championship. So that's a great point. Like if you're just one dimensional, you win in one certain way, it's very difficult to win a championship. It's very difficult to go deep in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, especially as the playoffs come around and teams are strategizing and scheming ways to beat you. And if you play one way and you win one way, that is very easy to take away in the playoffs. So you have to be able to win different ways. And that is why teams that win different ways usually are teams that go far because it's hard to scheme against a team that can win different ways.
Yep. Absolutely. So, yeah, so we'll be interesting seeing them playing Golden State and the Lakers coming up this week.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, but that's going to do it for this episode of Nick of Time. And we will discuss about the Yankees throughout the MLB season, of course.
Jacked up and being frank.
Oh.
The Nick of Time's your other show.
That's going to do it for this episode of Jack and being frank. And we will discuss about the Yankees throughout the MLB season. And we'll be discussing the Knicks, of course, as they get through that late grind of the season, end of the season. So we'll be discussing that as well. And I'm your host, Jack Lemanowitz, here with my co-host, Frank Aranio, and we're signing off.